Serious, what was your "thank God I looked at the contract" moment? Viewers Edition. Story 1. I currently get few benefits from the state, but despite being promised a share, since I can't have a job, I've gotten not any of these for almost a year, and when I bring it up, I'm told they aren't for me. Even when I bring up some of them clearly are for my use only, and not just to repay gas for their travel or something. I haven't been able to use my $100 for clothes, but my mom still pockets it. And when I complain about this, I'm told about how I declined the bakery job I was offered by the state of New York and how some money is better than no money. But I specifically didn't take that job because I didn't want my career to start and end on a mockery. The bakery was a private labeler, selling to Wegmans and other stores and allowing their products to be labeled as such and not as a special needs bakery. And they used payment slips and performance-based pay. So even if I'm high-functioning, as disgusting as that is to say as an autistic person, and somehow hit the performance mark, I'd still be paid less than minimum wage. And once you get into a "we adopt the puppies" job like that, you can never shake that reputation of being cheap labor. I want to be able to pay for my house and food later in life, if I'm even allowed to have one, thank you. And the cherry on top was that 95% of upper management was made up of people without disabilities. And when I was being interviewed, and by interviewed I mean they were giving my mom the sales pitch, they had the gall to tell me that I had no right to ask for an ND majority management company because neurologically disabled individuals need rational people to teach them how to do their job properly. Like, what the actual frick did you just say to me? I've also had my accounts drained before I even got them. My grandmother's sister actually gave both me and my sister college accounts when she passed away as inheritance. But when I asked for access, since I knew I had access to them, or should have, because I got the paperwork on Christmas a month after she passed from cancer as a tween, I was told that the account no longer exists. When I obviously threw a "what the frick" moment, I was told that since the account was an investment-based account, I don't know exactly the type, but either way, I have since found out that it wouldn't have mattered on the two guesses I have, same results. That my mom took both me and my sister when I was 8 and she was 6 and had us sign endorsements to allow her to drain the accounts, to which she said she put the money in the Disney trip above. She said she did this because there was only a few hundred in each account, and there was no money being made. That most days we were accruing cents or losing money. However, I made a good friend out of many of my school teachers, and one of them was my high school finance teacher. So I brought up to him privately my guesses on the accounts, and basically what he told me was that the story is BS. The account type that I was told could have been two different things, but on either one, over the span that I had them, and should have had them, they should have been making significant profit, not cents like my mom told me. And that also meant my sister's account would have been making profit as well. Story 2. My grandmother has friends that work with various businesses, so she often gets looped into BS. And recently, one of these friends, who has for a long time been known for being a peddler, she sold us a travel agency that messed up our first Disney vacation so bad that despite paying so much that we had to drain both my sister's and my inherited college accounts to pay the fees when I was only 8, that they didn't even give my grandmother handicap access and forgot my bed, so they had to give me a rolling mat on the floor despite it being at Riverside, for example, gave my grandmother another great deal with Spectrum, and it's killing her, almost literally. Both her and my grandfather are now retired. My grandfather finally retired mid-pandemic, well into his 70s, and my grandmother needs a literal lifeline pump into her heart to prevent an inevitable heart failure that's incurable. So this twist came to her and said that she found this amazing deal at Spectrum, where you can pay for only 10 channels and only have streaming, and it will be so much cheaper than the plan she had before. Well, guess what? She's actually paying more. She can't watch even those 10 channels because the Rokus she barely knows how to use are always buffering. And now I have to tell her every time I come over that no, I can't do anything to fix it. She has the equivalent of Internet Ultra plus TV Select plus Voice, and was paying the base despite having the account since Time Warner $120 a month. But now she's paying $180 a month for 10 channels instead of $213 and internet that can't handle having more than 2 TVs on at the same time or her tablet on while the TV is on, and her home phone. Oh, by the way, they aren't charging her for the channels. The channels are cheap, as they should be. She's only being charged $20 for the channels. No, they just multiplied the charge for the poopy internet to make up for the channels and then some. Gone are the days of the golden era of television, where the customer came out on top. There was that brief stint of a decade or so where cable TV subsided and streaming ruled supreme for pretty cheap. Thousands of pieces of content to choose from on demand for less than what you were paying in cable or network TV packages. Then, when the success of Netflix became apparent and Hulu and the like took off, and all the other existing networks decided that they needed skin in the game, now we're back to stacking all the subscriptions from each service to create a package again that either rivals or surpasses the original cable pricing. And yet most of it is subpar entertainment anyway, because these streaming services needed to pad their platform with content or stay beholden to their shareholders. It's why Netflix is crumbling, because their primary revenue came from subscriptions, whereas something like Disney Plus has an entirely separate revenue stream and isn't just bleeding money by paying licensing fees to content that they don't own. Of course, many people choose to just pirate content nowadays because it's the path of least resistance. But all in all, it's just all bread and circuses anyway. Story 3. So with my credit under my parents' control, no card access other than a green light card, yes, the kid's card, and the fact I had to steal my own social security number back because I wasn't allowed to know it, being told I would be irresponsible with it. I may be autistic and a tad naive, but I'm not that big of a dip-dong, I promise. There's a big difference between being so freaking poor that you're willing to fill out 500 surveys on Swagbucks for only $1 and fill your email with spam and giving out your entire freaking identity because someone says they'll give you a free car. Emails are replaceable. Social security numbers are not. And I have a hidden cash card account on that SSN because I can't run any investments off Greenlight due to their permission. They, thank God, have never used cash before. They use PayPal for everything, but cash, never. So they didn't realize that the cash card transactions required me to put my social security number in and an old driver's permit they left with me to activate the account as a bank service, since they also hold all of my IDs. They did throw out the mailer on me, unfortunately, so I only have the digital card, not the physical card. I wouldn't trust my family with guardianship, not in a million years. My grandfather's trying to take care of her, but he doesn't understand tech much either. And for state care? Yeah, I don't think I need to get into that. CPS failed me. Mental health failed me. OPWDD failed me. Pretty much everything failed me. And I know how state guardians have treated clients before, and since my grandmother was more caring to me than my own mom in my early childhood, I'd rather not. Story 4. About 18 years ago, I got into a 4-car accident that happened at a light. I was the middle car. I was given tickets like I caused the whole thing. I challenged the tickets because I was rear-ended. I got a phone call from the court asking to discuss. They claim after review they would waive all fees and all points. I just need to sign. I read the contract, and it states I still take full responsibility for the accident. I point this out, and the guy handing me the contract is like, "Yeah, but you're not getting punished, and your car just has bumper damage." I said, "I don't care, and will win in court." As I left, I felt something was odd. Found out later the guy who started the whole thing was an off-duty cop. I was 22 at the time, and they thought they could slip it past me. Once my court date comes up, I go in and wait for the judge. I show I was the third car and the damage to both bumpers. Judge agrees I wasn't the cause and will dismiss the tickets. I got a call from a clerk about 4 days later. It seemed no one could find the tickets to dismiss them and asked if I had any information that could help. I gave him the name of the officer who gave me the tickets. I'm not sure why the judge took it so seriously, but yeah, he figured out that the one who issued me the tickets was a bud of the one who caused the accident, and they chose me because I was the youngest driver in the pile. Story 5. I was really in need of some work about a year ago, as there were severe employment issues in my city, and I guess kinda everywhere else too. I got hooked up with this guy that worked on small machines and large construction stuff. I was told I would be repairing things, as that was what I was getting hired for. But upon getting there, boss was like 30 minutes late, I ended up doing just manual labor the entire time. Also, the place was just a large scrapyard kind of place, with at least 20 different construction equipment and vehicles that needed to be repaired, and most of them were backlogged by upwards of 5 years. Not only that, but despite the major amount of work that would need to be done, there were only 4 people who worked there, including me. I ended up just saying that this wasn't my job and didn't even want to get paid because I felt like this was my fault for not looking into this more. Story 6. As a former notary, it is normal for just the buyers and the notary to be there for the signing. The notary brings all the items the parties need to sign to the closing. A notary's job from that point is to confirm the ID of the parties and then wait for them to go through the documents and sign where they need to sign. I have sat through closings much like these, where the party will read everything. It takes 2 or 3 hours of a time. It was good to find that mistake. It is usually a 5-minute fix, a deed to add the new party. This is a bit variant on where the closing is taking place. Worst comes to worst, the buyers are allowed to write in names on the form itself and just initial the change. So long as it is signed by a notary, those changes are taken as written. Story 7. I've read the warranty agreement for those warranties, and the person is being hyperbolic. The Act of God clause excludes coverage for things that were damaged by natural events, like lightning. Not a typical power surge like what might happen during a storm, but millions of volts of lightning going through the product, or volcanic lava, or floodwater. When most people think their house got hit by lightning, it's actually just a surge from the power coming back on. That's why typically only 1 or 2 things may blow out, because surges don't always knock things out, but they can reduce their integrity, so the next surge might. If lightning gets into your wiring and you don't have a way to mitigate it, everything on the circuit is likely going to be fried. I've always thought this was a funny, antiquated term that remained on legal documents. An act of God seems so subjective, especially when the law is involved and usually overly defined. A natural disaster or a freak accident seem like better options if trying to keep church and state separated. But I guess for insurance companies, which are privately run, then they don't have to maintain that separation of language. Story 8. A similar thing happened to me. Sorta. Applied to a church. I am religious. However, I have a different interpretation than most people in my religion. Contract or similar document was me saying, I agree that X, Y, and Z are wrong and will not promote, participate, or otherwise encourage these things, including sexuality and gender identity. They probably wouldn't have done anything if I signed and didn't follow through. However, I still couldn't do it. Felt like I'd be betraying friends if I did. Although, funnily enough, I didn't get the position. However, I did get a call back, and they seemed somewhat interested. So I guess no one even looked at it. Story 9. Judges love hearing things like this. They're always more than happy to ruin someone's day for causing trouble with the people being called in to fulfill their civil service duties. I worked through a temp agency during my jury duty summons, and they not only failed to mention to the company I was working for I would be out for a week, but also told my boss at the company I was working for I wasn't responding to calls and they hadn't heard anything from me. He was more than a little ticked off when I had the cops next to me confirm I was in fact at a courthouse. Good times. Story 10. I'm a data hoarder, an actual hoarder. I keep everything in my room. I stay in my room, and I'm extremely jumpy when people open the door or come up behind me because there's no sense of privacy or ownership. In fact, I have been told in the past that because I'm their child, I don't deserve privacy. And later, the fact I was locked up helped give them the excuse of having to be able to break in whenever I was at risk, even allowing them to excuse themselves when removing my door entirely and replacing it with a baby gate at my father's house. Story 11. I sell used cars and have to sign multiple contracts daily. It's shocking how few people read or understand what they're signing. I literally explain every section of our contracts so they understand what they're signing. And people are in such a hurry, they get irritated and annoyed, they'll just sign before I've finished explaining a page before. It's so frustrating because I know what terms can be slipped in these contracts, and I work hard to break the sleazy, crooked salesman stereotype. But if people are just signing whatever is put in front of them, how do you fix ignorance? I think there's legal precedent for not upholding the terms of service agreements that are too long and unrealistic to expect signers to have actually read and understand everything. I get why it has all of it in there because the company is likely trying to cover their own buns, but ain't nobody got time for that, and we can't spend all our hours reading fine print. If it's a life decision like buying a house or entering into an employment agreement, then sure, read that front to back. But downloading a new app? Who's going to take the time? Of course, that is where the plot to the new season of Black Mirror demonstrates the dangers of blindly signing away access to our personal data. So, you choose wisely. Story 12. Barely able to see or read. I skimmed through the papers before signing and noticed the word amputation on the third or fourth page. I asked what that was, and they said it was my first option from the insurance company, and they explained the insurance company required them to bring it first. I asked what option B was. They brought a different set of papers, which I read to the best of my ability by forcing myself to focus on restructuring and pinning of the bones. Story 13. After having it out with the insurance company, they said their reasoning was that they believed that I would never be able to use the fingers again. Needless to say, I chose option B and currently have 2 of the affected fingers with 100% movement, 80% feeling, and the worst one with 80% movement and almost completely numb, but still loads better than no fingers. I changed insurance companies and am still able to flip them off whenever someone mentions the other company's name. Story 14. I recently had a circular saw incident that almost cut off the 3 middlemost fingers on my left hand. I have Medicare insurance that is supposed to work well with the hospital that I was sent to. I arrived at the hospital and was given a couple heavy doses of fentanyl and hydromorphone, and then handed some papers. I asked what they were for, and they said it was to get my hand fixed up. Story 15. My parents abused me all my life, and they're massive opportunists, to the point where, 1, the reason I was first locked up in a psych ward for 2 weeks was ultimately due to their abuse and not due to actual seppuku risk, and 2, I am incredibly protective of, well, pretty much everything. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.